Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Road to Cheltenham. Ruby and I are really looking forward to this evening's edition because not only are we looking back on the best action from the past week, we're looking ahead to a glorious weekend of action. Hopefully we've got Sandown and Wetherby going ahead, but the main focus, of course, is going to be the Dublin Racing Festival. Ruby, everywhere you look this weekend, there's top-class racing.
Oh, there is. It's great that Sandown and Wetherby have facilitated those extra races that were lost last weekend. Of course, to Sandown's card, you're adding to the Scilly Isles, and then Leopardstown is end to end with Grade 1 races, competitive handicaps, and really good bumpers. So yeah, it's a really exciting weekend, and I suppose a little different for us, Lydia. There's not that much to look back on. Yeah. It's more what we're looking forward to this weekend.
Exactly. And so we have reshuffled the show so that our main focus is about the racing that is coming up. But first, we do need to talk about some important things that did survive the weather over the past week. And top of the bill, of course, was Shishkin's run in the Lightning Novices Chase at Doncaster. There was a bit 4 out, Ruby, that I just absolutely loved.
I think everyone did. And I know from watching it live, I wasn't so sure through the first part of the race how he was going. He was leading on his off foreleg, yet he was jumping to his left. And I wasn't sure, is he going, isn't he? Well, I always knew he was going, but I was kind of expecting him to be looking more dominant in the race. But when he jumped the 5th last before they began to swoop into the home straight and Nico de Boinville moved them up on the outside of Eldorado Allen, it was like you had a different horse in the race. Like you just switched him on and he's moved from the home turn to the fourth last, to the 3rd last. He just looked brilliant. Now he's pottered down, not pottered is the wrong word. He's coasted down the straight, half idle from there. He was jumping was brilliant. To the left a bit, but the fact he was leading on his off 4 and jumping left, I just think he was born idle. He was good and straight beside Eldorado Allen, and he just looked really, really good.
That's the sense that you got from what Nico de Boinville had to say afterwards, that the horse can go left, can go right, can go straight. It's sort of when he's sort of idling along in his mind. But when you ask him to switch it on, which is what he did 4 out, then he's bang there for you.
He is, and he was bang there in 2 strides. Now, obviously, where's he going? He's going to the Arkle. He could have All Mankind, and we'll see Energumene this weekend. That'll be a strong race with 2 live horses in front of you. So I think Nico will have to switch him on a bit earlier than he did in Doncaster, but he just looks a really good racehorse.
I imagine that would probably focus this horse's mind. That's kind of the sense I'm getting, that the stronger the competition, the better he'll probably look. He's reminding me a lot of Altior. Now, I know that Nico de Boinville didn't like to make comparisons afterwards, and I do understand that because, you know, you have a personal association with these horses and you don't want to start ranking them. It's like ranking your friends, isn't it? But for us observers, he looked to me a lot like Altior.
Yeah, he's a similar style of racing, but you also have the politics of it and the connections. So you ring Shishkin's owners after the race and the first thing they'll say is, oh, you thought Altior was better. Or then you go and ride Altior next week and they're telling you think Shishkin's better. So I can see where Nico was coming from. Play the political game and don't nail your colours to any mast. Keep everybody, I wouldn't say happy, but keep them all on side anyway. And it's just he won't want to get left isolated 3rd in the Arkle. That'll be your only worry. He will want some bit of competition to keep him close enough to All Mankind and Energumene if that's the way the race pans out. If he just gets idle and isolated in 3rd, just not a situation Nico will want to be in.
Okay, I see that. So Energumene and All Mankind potentially fighting out in front. And
well, not even if All Mankind goes and Energumene sits 2nd.
Right.
Shishkin doesn't want to be too far off the back of Energumene that he's idle. He'll want to be close enough. So a bit of competition to keep him there be a help.
Okay, interesting thoughts. Right. Miranda won the mare's hurdle on that day as well. She beat Floressa and Marie's Rock way back in 3rd, I think she was in the end. Let's deal with Miranda first. She's not entered the Cheltenham Festival. They're talking about the Kingwell.
Yeah, and look, she looked to be like a flat track would really suit her. Kingwell obviously is in Wincanton as well. She travelled super, jumped really well, and Harry Cobden always looked really comfortable on her. Marie's Rock, I think I might have gotten her name correct today. I couldn't pronounce it right at all on Saturday. Marie's Rock it is. I don't see any excuse for her. Mick Fitzgerald was trying to make excuses for her before the race for her Newbury run, what could go right for her. I thought everything that was going to go right for her went right, and Floresa's run a race. But Miranda was just too good for the other two. Simple as.
Yeah, she's been pretty much exclusively campaigned on flat tracks, so those clearly suit her. Floresa has got an entry in the Mayor's Hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival, stepping up in trip, and that was the first time that I thought that I could see Joe McGrath was making that point, that he felt that would suit her after she won at Newbury, and I didn't see it until Doncaster. I can see it now.
So could I. She just didn't have the gears when Miranda arrived to quicken up. Floresa just stayed at the same pace. Now, she never slowed down. She never gave up. She just didn't have a gear to quicken at 2 miles, and stepping up will definitely suit her. And her style of running. Like, Honeysuckle doesn't necessarily make the running. Floresa does like to make it. I often in a Mayor's Hurdle, just trying to think back to the top of my head, there mightn't be a massive amount of pace in it. So tactically, it's a race that could suit her.
Yeah, in the past, Stormy Island's quite often been able to boss it.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
So, and I think that the Floresa is sort of moving into, place territory here, potentially.
Definitely. And if she's able to dictate it towards the front and not taken on or not hassled or challenged, she'll get a long way through the race doing what she wants to do.
And Marie's Rock, she looked a very special novice hurdler last season. I tend to agree with you here. I mean, she's got that champion hurdle entry, but she won't settle. She won't drop her head. That's not letting her jump. Looks like there's something wrong with her, something irritating her.
Yeah, she did settle. She wasn't keen, because if you look at James Bowen's hands, they're always on her withers. His hands didn't come up to try and fight her mouth, so she was settled. But she carries her head in a very awkward position, like there's something physically at her, or she just won't put her head down. It's always stuck up in James's face, and as you said, it didn't let her jump.
Okay, on the same day we had the Riverdon, the Albert Bartlett sponsored Novices Hurdle for Stayers. This was run at quite an attritional pace, but it had a really, really good wide margin winner in the Cob.
Yeah, but I was watching the speedometer or the clock, whatever fractions I was watching through the race, and to be fair to Nico de Bonneville, it was a strong gallop, but it was very, very even. There was such little difference in the fractions all the way through the first till they got back past the winning post, or nearly to Rose Hill when they started to up. Now, they did get racing from a long way from home, but to be fair to the Cob, he was definitely the strongest stayer, and he was definitely the best horse on the day. He wasn't entered in the Albert Bartlett, so you'd have to think it was a little bit of a surprise to Ben Pauling, but he won enough prize money there to be supplemented into the Albert Bartlett if they so wish. And looking at the race, it's a race we both think is quite open. I know if the Cob was mine, I'd be putting him in.
I definitely agree. I think he's got enough experience. I agree. I think he's the best horse in the race. I think they did get racing at quite a bit of a way out. Emi Sacre was a little bit keen, wasn't he? I suppose with the Cob, I'd be wanting to brush up his jumping a little bit. There were some times in the mid part of the race where he wasn't very slick at all.
No, but he'd be heading to the new course in Cheltenham, where jumping hurdles doesn't necessarily have to be your forte.
Go on, expand on that for everyone else.
Well, it's such a long run in from the third last. You're nearly a mile from home, but you only have 2 more jumps to jump. So there's so little jumping in the last 7 furlongs on the new course in Cheltenham over hurdles that a horse like the Cob, by the time they get racing, he'd only have 2 hurdles to jump.
Yeah, and he'll be thundering and be particularly strong at that end of the race. Moving away from Doncaster on Saturday then to Warwick. Yesterday we had the Protectress Mares Chase that was rescheduled from Huntingdon and Bandon the previous week, and it was won by Annie Mack, and she had Zambella and Happy Diva behind her.
Yeah, and it was a good performance. Look, we highlighted Annie Mack a couple of weeks ago as maybe an English challenger for the Miss Paddy Power Chase. Zambella went a really good gallop, and if you just watch the start of the race, there was 5 runners, but by the time they got back to where they jumped those 5 fences on a line, Zambella, Happy Diva and Annie Mack have pulled well clear of the other 2. Now, Zambella jumped really well in front and really put it up to Annie Mack and Happy Diva, and looked like she had Annie Mack in trouble round in the home turn. But to be fair to Annie Mack, she stayed strongly, got upsides between the last 2 and went away to win well. She won 5.5 lengths, but she could have won a bit further. And Happy Diva faded to be 14 lengths back. Now, I actually think Happy Diva has way better form in Cheltenham than she does anywhere else, and she could run a big race in the same Mares Chase. But Annie Mack definitely deserves her place in the lineup.
She's very strong at the finish. She has got to answer the opposite thing to Happy Diva, really. In a couple of times that we've seen her at Cheltenham, she's made significant errors. Yeah,
she's run behind Sam Crow in last year's Marsh. She made a bad mistake. I think it was the 4th last. And when she ran there in this year's Caspian Caviar Gold Cup, she missed the last ditch. Whereas you look at Happy Diva, she fell the first time she was there. She was then second to Azo, second to Northern Bow, beat Breland, second to Simply the Bets at last year's festival, and fell behind Coo Cody this year. But she brought down behind Breland on her first start. So she does have strong form in Cheltenham, and especially the run behind Simply Bets, that's pretty strong form.
Let's move on to what's been going on in Ireland. A horse has reappeared over hurdles that I really like when he was a novice hurdler. This is Sam's Profile, trained by Mouse Morris. Yeah,
he won the Galmoy last Thursday in Gowran Park. But if we're looking at him here in the Ballymore novices hurdle, City Island in the navy colours, Champ in the green and gold at JP McManus's, and Sam's Profile at the second last, kind of lands awkwardly and knuckles and stumbles away from it. Now, he couldn't pick up from there and end up finishing fifth. He then went to Punchestown and had a run. Missed a bit of time, started off over fences and Thurles and took a crashing fall behind Lord Royal, who actually fell 2 fences later, and Eurobot, who hasn't strengthened the form. But you could see why Mouse Morris decided. He had another run over fences, which was poor, and then Mouse went back over hurdles. And if you pick him up in Gowran Park in the Galmoy, he starts stone last. He sets off last. Strong enough gallop. The old Karen 6-shooter end up being the 2 horses that come to the 4, but plenty of horses in here with a shot. And if you pick him up climbing the hill to the 4th last, Philip Enright is still last on him. He took his time. He's wearing a hood. He had been a bit keen in the past. He got a good run down the inside into the home straight of Borough Saint, and then he comes to a drive with his challenge between the last 2 to beat the old Kerr. Now, it was a real slugging performance in the end. Great to see him back over hurdles. Could you see him in the mix in the stairs hurdle? I think he has to improve a lot, Lydia.
Yeah, I think he does. I do like him. Just one thing, when he fell at Thurles, he cracked a rib, and Mouse Morris was saying afterwards they didn't actually discover until after he'd run the next time. So, you'd give a horse a free pass for running around with it? I know it's a minor injury, but still it would hurt, wouldn't it?
You wouldn't run too far yourself with a cracked rib.
No.
So I would definitely give him a free pass for that.
And I do think he's a proper stayer. It's just whether he's quick enough for the stayers hurdle in a weird way.
Well, the other side of the coin is if they choose to ride him the same way with the hood and he drops in to take his time and you ride a horse to obtain its best possible finishing position, something like Sam's Profile could run into a place at a big price. Yes,
yeah, I can see that. He's a horse that I very much like. Let's move on to the Thyestes, shall we, at Gowran. And Cocoa Beach, well, he sort of ran through the race like he'd been dropped in with half the weight he was carrying. Was it those first-time blinkers that were helping him?
Definitely, and a good bit of training by Gordon Elliott. He looked like he was crying out for them, but Gordon waited till the Thyestes to put him on him. And he missed the break, which is a hard enough thing to do in a Thyestes. He was out the back up to the first fence, but a good jump, and with the blinkers on him, he travelled through the field to get a good position. And when they head out in the second circuit, you can see Acapella, Bourgeois, Spyglass Hill, up there on the outside, down the inside is Dunvegan, and Cocoa Beach in the middle of your shot is in a lovely position. And he stays travelling like that all the way. Brilliant jump at the third last when Run Wild Fred was coming to challenge him, and Saturnus and Class Conti, and he just sprints away from them, pings that second last. He did the same at the last one as he wanted. He's in the National Hunt Chase picture now, isn't he? But there was maybe a couple of more horses last weekend that could be in the same boat, but it was a good performance, and that kind of experience will stand him in good stead.
We've got a viewer question. This is from at Timothea Tuba, and thank you very much for your question. And he's asking, why run Pencilful of Lead with an £8 penalty instead of going to the Dublin Racing Festival? Less taxing on the horse and not expecting to win, ? The end of my RSA dream, I think. And then Matt Toombs replies, I think Gordon was nervous of good ground at the Dublin Racing Festival, says that Pencil needs a lot of cut. And Timotei says, think that's maybe what worries me more. Can't see how he comes to the RSA now and puts up to a horse like Monkfish, albeit on level weights. The time didn't seem much quicker than the Hunter's Chase later, over 3. Now, I mentioned that particular chat because Pencilful of Lead, of course, was beaten at Naas on Sunday in the race won by Eclat de Rire.
Yeah, I think he lines up, Lydia, for qualifications purposes. He's had 3 runs over fences, Pencilful of Lead, but he still hadn't met the qualification criteria for the National Hunt Chase. If Connections wanted that option, it was 2.6 when he won in Galway, 2 miles and 6 when he won in Punchestown, and his third run was in Limerick over 2.3.5. He had to have finished in the first 3 in a 3-mile chase. So it was either in Naas last weekend or he waited for the 10-up chase in Navan, because this weekend in Leopardstown was only 2 miles and 5. Now, I think that's the technicalities of the rule. I don't think that's quite encompassing the spirit of what the rules were intended. 2 miles and 6 furlongs in Galway in October. If you can win over that trip, you're going to stay any trip. There's no doubt about that. I can understand why the rules are brought in, but I think that's it's definitely not the spirit of what they're intended.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They're trying to get horses that have shown an ability to stay well, aren't they? They don't want a horse to be trying a trip for the first time and maybe getting exhausted over it. I get is the sense of it. But I take your point, having that cut-off point and cutting off when there's so many 2 miles, 6.5 furlongs at a certain part of the season. But
it even happened with Per Brown Eyes for the Grand National qualification being the same. He was to run in the Leinster National and Ace, which was cancelled, rescheduled in Gorn, but the distance was dropped back to 2 miles, 7.5 furlongs. So he bolts in the Leinster National in Gorn Park, but doesn't meet the qualification criteria for the English Grand National because it wasn't the required distance. I think there is the spirit of the law and the letter of the law.
Yeah.
And I think they're a little bit confused at times. But that's to answer your question. To me, that's why Pencil Full of Lead ran. What did we see on the day? Well, we saw a possible festival chase challenger in Eclat de Rear. Rachel Blackmore booked him out in front and he went a really good gallop. Now, the interesting horse from the start to look at is Foxy Jacks at the back of the field, because by the time they get to the the second fence actually, Pencil Full of Lead makes the first of his mistakes. And he didn't jump really well on Sunday either, Pencil Full of Lead, for whatever reason. At the second fence, he makes a mistake. Away from the third fence, heading to the fourth fence, Foxy Jacks pulls forward onto the back of Eclat de Rear and kind of sets him alight, which kind of would make you think, could Eclat de Rear be keen in the festival chase? If he gets hassled on the front end, maybe he could be. At the fourth fence, Pencil Full of Lead makes another mistake. So when they get back to where they started, you see Eclat de Rear has a nice stretch on the field without going that strong a pace. Escaria 10 is the other horse you want to keep your eye on. At the 11th fence, Pencil Full of Lead again makes another mistake. At the 12th really shows Eclat de Rear's jump, and he's outstanding, but it shows Escaria 10 nodding as well. And then when they get to the home turn, Rachel's travelling really well in front and Eclat de Rear. Jack Kennedy's going okay on Escaria 10, but Pencil Full of Lead looks to be struggling. And I think Eclat de Rear does Escaria 10 for speed then, quickens away from him up the straight. Escaria 10 really keeps on and keeps going. So when by the line, to me, I was thinking the runner-up is your National Hunt Chase horse.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. He's got the right profile for it, and he seems to be heading towards it. Gordon's got a strong hand in this division, though, hasn't he? Because he's also got Galvin.
He has Galvin, who's the likely favourite, who we haven't seen since Cheltenham in November, or was it even October?
I think it was October.
It could have been October, yeah. But I would like what I saw with Escaria 10. He's a strong stayer in the McNeil family colours, and I think he's a big runner.
Yeah, I agree. The winner, though, is he too inexperienced? Could he be a bit buzzy for the Festival Novices Chase?
Was he 2 runs over hurdles, 2 runs over fences? I'd say he's a very good racehorse. There's a lovely way of jumping, but it would definitely be crossing my mind, yeah.
Yeah, because he wasn't really taken on, and the one time that Foxy Jacks got close, there was
a reaction. Set him alight. And I know Cheltenham was going to be different. No crowds, no atmosphere, but you're not going to get a solo in front.
No. And as you know, I put up Pencil Full of Lead. Thank goodness none of a no bet for the Festival Novices Chase. That doesn't look like a goer now. I felt that he looked as though there was something not quite right with him, because if there was one thing that I liked about him previously, it was the way he was jumping. Whereas on this occasion, he appeared to be backing off his fences like he was uncomfortable.
Yeah, when he had to change legs and shorten. We saw it at the second fence, the fourth fence, the 11th fence, and the second last. No, they weren't jumps that he didn't jump like he had jumped in the past.
No. So if something comes to light, though, I doubt whether it's going to be. It makes the Cheltenham Festival a bit of pressure, really, doesn't it? You know, if you do find something.
There is no bet. I wouldn't worry about it.
I'm not thinking about that aspect for me. I'm thinking about connections.
Really?
Of course.
Really?
Yeah, really. Really, yeah. Honest Injun. Now, I'm delighted to say that we're joined this week on Road to Cheltenham by Gavin Cromwell, who's got a top team assembled for the Dublin Racing Festival, and we'll probably see him bringing some over for the Cheltenham Festival as well. Gavin, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for sparing the time to chat to us.
Thanks for having me on, Lydia.
The Dublin Racing Festival, it's growing all the time, and how important is it to you?
Yeah, it's great. So so many grade ones and huge prize money, big handicaps, and the timing is good. You know, there's still plenty of time to have your horses for Cheltenham. And thankfully we've a few more this year than we've had on other years, and they're growing, thank God.
Yeah, you've got a great team. One horse of yours that I'm particularly fond of is Dava Star, and I'm sure many people share the fondness for that horse. You've decided to go for the Irish Arkle and not the Flogas. Talk me through your thinking on that, please.
Just with the ease in the ground, and to be honest, it's I wouldn't say it's an easier race, but I think with the ease in the ground and stepping up to 2.5, it just would be stretching him. If the ground was on the better side and the 2.5 was going, the Flogas was going to cut up, we may have went there. But I think the logical thing to do is to stick to the Arkle, the 2x1.
And what are your reflections on his second to Franco de Port over Christmas?
Yeah, it was a funny race. It was a bit of a messy one. Look, in hindsight, maybe Johnny shouldn't have tried to follow Jack, and you know, I suppose it's easy to say it after, but you know, when you let the likes of Jack Kennedy on a favourite, you can't let them go too far. And you know, Johnny tried to follow him and paid the price.
So basically, they did too much too soon, didn't they?
Yeah, and all things considering, you know, for a horse that did so much early in a race, he actually finished out, you know, quite well. But we set it up for the winner.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that reading. How good do you think this horse is? Because obviously he's been second in an Irish Champion hurdle, third in a Champion hurdle. Do you think he's as good or better over fences?
He certainly jumps well. He's inclined to jump a little bit big if you ask him. You know, can just spend a little bit too much time in the air. But on a whole, I think as a novice he is quite good. And look, he's only got one crack at a novice year, so look, we're definitely going to stick at it. He's, I suppose, the year that's in it, I think it is a good year for novice chasers. Let it be a 2 miles or open trip. They seem to be a good bunch.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
You've got Energamine, obviously hanging around, Shishkin on this side of the Irish Sea. You've got Envoy Alan if you go up in trip. So there are no easy options. There's not.
But as I said, you've only got one crack at his novice year, and look, we're just going to have to put up with it.
Clearly, you'll learn more from this weekend. But at the moment, looking at Cheltenham, would you be inclined towards the Arkle or the Marsh?
Look, he'll definitely have an entry in both, and I like Envoy Allen is basically unstoppable, and I think Shishkin is unstoppable. So unless something happens with either one of them, it's a hard decision to make. But I'd say probably I'd stick with the Arkle. You know, I think that, you know, it's a testing 2 miles, the Arkle, and you know, he'll clearly stay up the hill well.
Some people throw the fact that he's a 9-year-old into the mix and say, you know, he's too old to reach the top over fences. What would be your response to that?
Well, he's a very likely raced 9-year-old. He didn't run until he was 6, and that was at the back end of the season. He had a tendon injury before I ever got him, and that's what delayed his start. And you know, so there's not very many miles on the clock, and he's certainly young at heart.
I think he's a super horse. I wish you the best with him. You've also got Gavin Arco, and you had the choice between the handicap hurdle or the Chanel Farmer Novices Grade 1 at the Dublin Racing Festival. You've headed towards the handicap hurdle. Again, what was your thinking?
Yeah, just with handicap ratings, I think, you know, he's probably a stone wrong with a few horses in the Grade 1, which he was the last time we ran him in the Grade 1, and he finished third, and he paid a penalty there because the handicapper put him up £6, and that obviously doesn't leave our handicap option any easier. But I really like him. I think he could be ahead of his mark, and I would like to gain a bit of experience in a handicap in view of potentially going to a handicap in Cheltenham, and we'll see how he gets on. And with the hustle and bustle of a big field, he'll gain plenty of experience, and we'll see how that goes.
I wonder how he might be ridden, because he has run particularly well when leading and has in the past seemed to sort of resent having been held up. But might you get a good pace that you can hold him up off in a handicap?
Yeah, that's the plan over the 2 miles. He stays quite well, and hopefully, if there is plenty of pace in the race, we're going to try and drop him in and ride a race and see how he gets on. It's a little bit of an experiment in a way, in view of going to Cheltenham and see where we are and just try something different and see how he goes. He stays really well, but he also travels really well too. So hopefully, if there was a good gallop, he'd come home well.
So does that sound as though he'll get an entry in the county, but maybe also go up for the Martin Pipe or the Coral Cup?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I would have thought the Martin Pipe would be tailor made for him if we'll see how this weekend goes, but that's in my head at the moment.
And who's the conditional jockey you've got in mind for that project?
Oh well, I couldn't see past Conor McNamara. He works here and he's a good lad, so
absolutely,
he definitely, yeah.
That'll be music to his ears, I'd have thought. And how about Vanillier? You've got the entry in the Nathaniel Lacey, the 2 mile 6 novice hurdle at the Dublin Racing Festival. What do you make of his chances in that?
Yeah, he ran he was just beaten in the Grade 2 at Christmas in Limerick and came home really strong. He's had a small wind up since that, and we think that's improved him. If it has, it certainly puts him in the mix. He's a lovely big stay-in type, and I really like him. And you probably won't see the best of him until he jumps a fence, but nonetheless, he's a lovely horse to have this year. And all being well, he'll head towards the Albert Bartlett after this. But we'll see how we get on here.
Do you think he's got the grizzled experience for the Albert Bartlett? Because quite often you see horses doing particularly well in that who've had multiple runs prior to that, either on the flat in points or under National Hunt rules.
Yeah, well, he won his point by really grueling it out, and it was only his second start, but he showed the traits of a horse that would be suitable to the Albert Bartlett. And his race in Limerick at Christmas was pretty much the same as well. It's a tough task, and although he finished second in it, he performed like one that might be suited to the Albert Bartlett.
Yeah, he looks like a tough cookie. You've got Let's Be Clear About It running in the bumper at the Dublin Racing Festival. How do you rate him?
Yeah, I think he's a really good horse. Look, he got beat the last day, but I suppose beaten by an exceptionally good horse. And beat him. A lot of the reason I think he got beat was for speed. Patrick Mullins rode him on the day in Navan, and he felt he maybe didn't go fast enough. Now I'm sure the result would have been the same no matter what, but I think he certainly wouldn't have been beaten as far. We're really happy with him since we gave him a little break, and he's come back in really well and fresh, and we're happy with him and expecting a big run.
Patrick has ridden him on all of his starts so far. So who are you reaching for this time?
Finian Maguire. So look, he's a rock solid jockey, and he's a straightforward horse, and yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Another one of your bumper horses caught my eye last week, and that was Percival Le Gallois, who made quite a taking debut at Goran. How do you rate him?
Yeah, he's a smart horse. Look, he's only a 4-year-old, so it's hard to know how good the division is, but we were pretty confident he was going to run a big race there in Goran, and he duly did, and we're not one bit surprised. And yeah, he's a really nice horse to look forward to.
And I'm also, of course, interested in Flooring Porter, this horse that you've got to be so fantastically progressive in your trademark style, bringing up through handicaps. And he made the jump into a Grade 1 last time. Jonathan Moore was able to nick a bit of ground at the start. How far can you assess whether he is right up to Grade 1 standard, or whether he was a smidgen flattered at all?
I don't know. Maybe he is a little bit flattered by that run, but I don't think so. It was a good solid field behind him, and they got to him, and he quickened and went away again. And I think it was just a rock solid performance. My one concern going to Cheltenham with him is on the old track that there's there's not a running rail all the way. He's a little bit quirky. He's very genuine, but he got beaten Gorn in a handicap one day where he jumped the last and he ran across the track to the rail. And, you know, he's just not completely straightforward. He is genuine, but I just would love if he had a running rail to help him all the way. That is a concern. And then obviously Paisley Park is a bit of a concern as well.
And there's Time Hill as well. And usually it looks like the British horses might be, you know, stronger in this division potentially. Yeah,
I suppose. But I would have thought Sire de Borlée was a good yardstick there in Leopardstown the last day. And, you know, we beat him well.
Does he need to lead this horse?
He doesn't need to lead, but no, I don't think he does. It's a hard one to figure out. He led in a Grade B handicap prior to Leopardstown, where he won. Excuse me, and he led by accident. Excuse me. Johnny was supposed to drop him in sort of halfway, and he just he kind of ran away with him down over the first, and he led, and it worked really well. And we said, sure, we'll stick to that one. But I don't think he necessarily needs to lead. Once they go a good gallop, I think he'd settle in, you know, wherever really.
Because they're tough tactics to execute, aren't they? At Cheltenham, the front running, trying to make all.
Certainly, definitely in Cheltenham. But Leopardstown is a good stiff track as well. You know, it takes plenty of getting as well.
And finally, true. Finally, I wonder whether you can give us a handicapper to follow, either at this weekend's Dublin Racing Festival, or looking beyond that to the festivals at Cheltenham or Aintree or Punchestown.
There's a horse. I think he's going to be a reserve now at the weekend. He jumped the last few in. He's in the 2 mile handicap chase. I thought he'd win in Limerick at Christmas, and I think it was the ground that beat him. I really fancied him. I thought he was my best chance of a winner over the Christmas. So I really like his chances if he gets in. Now it's a very competitive race, but he's one that certainly to keep an eye on.
Gavin, thank you very much for sharing your trade secrets with us and for talking us through all of the key members of your team this weekend and beyond. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lydia. Thank you.
Now it's time for the viewer's question, and we're very grateful to Conor Canan, who has this question for us.
Hi, Lydia and Ruby. I've often wondered what it is that causes a horse to burst blood vessels. Does a jockey know when they're riding a race if the horse has burst a blood vessel? Also, if a horse bursts a blood vessel once, is it bound to happen again? And lastly, how common is it?
So thank you, Conor, for your question. Ruby, blood from the nose can simply mean that a horse has hit his head or has some form of sinus or nasal infection. But when a horse is said to have broken a blood vessel, we're usually referring to exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage. What is that?
Look, it's fragile blood vessels in the lungs that rupture, brought on, as you've just said, by exercise, stress, pressure, whatever it is. And I think it's quite a common thing in horses. It's quite a common thing in athletes, actually. All athletes, you hear runners talking about the taste of blood in their mouth. So it is quite a common thing. But in horses, it can become quite severe in some, and eventually the build-up of blood in their lungs will come out and down their nostrils. Different countries have different approaches to it. I know in places like Australia, if a horse does it, recurringly does it, it's not allowed to race anymore. But it is. And why does it happen? I don't know. Does anybody really know? It can be hereditary. It can be caused by sickness or infection, dust allergies. But you try and keep horses healthy, keep them fresh, and hope it doesn't happen. But I don't think anybody's ever found a cure for it that's non-medical.
No, and once it's happened once, and that can come about because the horse is carrying an infection in some kind of way. Horses are sort of sucking in so much air with every stride. Anything like an infection that puts pressure on their lungs can cause it to be a little bit damaged. And then once you've got that damage, it's kind of like a scar, and it means that is more easily damaged again. So once it happens once, it can happen again, can't it?
Yeah, it's a weakness. So you don't want it to happen again. And it can happen once off. But you will see a lot of horses that do bleed from the nose are given a lot of time to recover because you want the lungs to build back up. and it's just a weakness that you'd rather not have.
Okay, and it seems odd that it's a fairly common condition, and really we could learn more about it. Let's move on to a less serious subject, which is the kerfuffle you have caused by your gutless each way bet on Ellie May.
I thought you were going to say something else there. I thought it was 50 the odds. I was full sure quarter the odds. I didn't 50 the odds conditions race. I think those bookmakers give you quarter the odds and everything.
Everybody thinks they've glimpsed the grand plan, which is that if you are tipping Ellie May for the Mrs. Paddy Power chase, therefore Benny Didier must be going for the Mare's Hurdle.
I was tipping Ellie May each way at 9-2, thinking it was great value, not realising I had only a fifth of the odds. And no, that doesn't mean Benny Didier is going back to the hurdle race. Willie Mullins said this week, he kind of said both in an interview he gave for the Dublin Racing Festival. So I'm afraid if he hasn't decided, how would I know?
Yeah, he was kind of leaning towards the Mare's Hurdle, but as ever, he's basically will be looking nearer the time to maximise his chances of winning as many Cheltenham Festival races as he possibly can, which means that Adam Griffiths' question, which is what chance would you give Benny Didier of running in the Stayers Hurdle, because she won the Galmoy last year, any price with me, her running in the
Stayers. They can have the same with me. I mean, she didn't run in the Stayers last year with a prep run. I couldn't see her lining up there first time.
On the bridle ask, can you please ask Ruby who'd choose to ride from Benny Didier, Colreevy and Ellie May in the Mare's Chase?
Benny.
Why?
She's achieved more. She's probably older though, but I think she was running up to the best mare in training last year, Honeysuckle, and that level of form would do.
Has she schooled over fences yet this season?
Not yet, but she will do the required amount of schooling before Cheltenham. But till Willie decides, does he want to run her over hurdles or over fences? You don't really want to school a hurdler over fences because they'll jump too high. So until Willie decides where he's going, the schooling will be on hold.
And so how late can that schooling be held off?
The week before.
Right.
2 or 3 schooling sessions.
Okay.
The required amount, I would have thought.
So we really are going to be waiting until the 11th hour, the last minute, as ever. Plus ça change. That's the news on Benny. So we promised you a thorough look at the big racing action this weekend, and we'll go to Leopardstown first and the Saturday of the Dublin Racing Festival. We'll start with the opening race, which is the Nathaniel Lacey and Partners Solicitors, and they've got a £50,000 Cheltenham bonus for stable staff, which is a great initiative. It's a novice hurdle, it's grade 1, it's over 2 miles 6. And where are you going to start? Maybe with Gaillard du Mesnil, who's really broken through for Willie Mullins, Ruby. And Willie was seemingly increasingly sweet on this horse when talking about him earlier in the week.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the most competitive races of the weekend, Lydia. Look, you have Gaillard du Mesnil, who we have here winning in Leopardstown at Christmas time, over 2.5 miles in a maiden hurdle. He's a very strong traveller, really good jumper. He beats Mr. Incredible, who won at Naas since. Really impressive, but he's going up in trip now and taking on older horses. Statler would be the big opposition of Willie Mullins' anyway. You see him here at Christmas where he made the run and jumped out really handily under Paul Townend. But by the time they get to the bypass last fence, Glens of Antrim is really closing him down. But Statler gallops on and stays at it. The extra couple of furlongs would be a big help to him. You've Cape Gentleman of Emmett Mullins's, Cesara Witch winner, made a promising debut win over hurdles in Punchestown when he won over 2.5 miles. Plenty of class, has a bit of speed. You'd have to think he'd be coming at Statler if Statler's on the front end. Holy Macapony is the really interesting one. He outbattled Gaillard du Mesnil in Punchestown in a maiden hurdle over 2.5 miles. It looked like Gaillard du Mesnil was coming to beat him, yet Holy Macapony seems to outstay him. But the one worry for him is his next run in Navan, where he ran into Ashdale Bob. That's Holy Macapony dropping out of the back of the shot. No reason, no explanation for it. Ashdale Bob travelled really well that day and quickened up well. But we pick up Ashdale Bob in Naas. He's over racing. Let's fly at the first hurdle and takes a heavy fall. He has to get over that. This is a really deep race, and you have your Albert Bartlett selection. Fakira, you see him here in Navan, staying strongly, getting there in the end. The 2-6 would really suit him. I think this is a strong race.
I do too. And I want to ask you about 2 additional bits of kit. Fakira is wearing first-time cheek pieces and Gaillard du Mesnil is wearing a first-time hood. What's your take on those?
So just to counteract what we were saying, Fakira to sharpen him up, the hood to try and slow Gaillard down.
Yeah. And you're handing the honours to?
Handing the honours to... I I don't know. I don't hand the honours here. I want to watch this.
It's going to be a great race.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair enough answer. Sometimes you do just want to watch a race, and I think this is going to sort a whole load of form lines out. Let's move on to the Ladbrokes Dublin Chase. It's a Grade 1 over 2 mile 1, and obviously last year they set up the fabulous contest between Shishkin and stablemate Min, and it's on again.
It is on again, and if we look at Christmas, this Christmas, the one addition to the race is Notebook. You see them here in Leopardstown at Christmas, Notebook and Shishkin at the 4th fence, colliding in the air, and then going at it to the 5th fence. Now, we all know the result. Shishkin's Poursoir runs away with it. If we roll it back to 12 months ago, you'll see where Min gets to the front at the same point in that race. The 4th fence, first in the back straight, and he tows Shishkin Poursoir along. You throw in Sides and Potsy, who went a really good gallop in a hurdle race in his last start. Probably not good enough, but he adds spice to the race as regards pace, and you have a really good contest. I'm still with Shishkin. I think Min wants a bit further. I think the soft ground and really suits Shishkin Poursoir, and I think even if Paul Townend may have picked the wrong one in the first, he'll be on the right one here.
It's going to have a big impact on Cheltenham, the Cheltenham Festival, wouldn't you think, with what the favourite for the Queen of the Champion Chase and the joint all favourite for the Ryanair and Min?
Yeah, I think it will. I think if what'll it do? I think if Shishkin Poursoir beats Min a couple of lengths, I think both will only shorten.
Yeah. Okay, it's followed by the Patrick Ward and Company Solicitors Irish Arkle Novice Chase, another Grade 1 over the 2 mile 1, and you mentioned him early in the show, but we're going to see Enoga Bean pitched in against the best horses at this distance in Ireland.
Yeah, and a lot of pace on here. Enoga Bean has made it on both. He starts over fences. You see him here in Naas heading to the first fence where he's leading Captain Guinness, whom he led all the way. Really good performance. Now, if you take Captain Guinness and you go to William Mullins, his other runner, unaccepted, followed Captain Guinness early in the race in Tipperary. But by the time we got to the 6th fence, Unaccepted's jumping has just propelled him by Captain Guinness. And he just coasts away in front to win really impressively. We haven't seen him since, but he's in good form. And then you have the 2 mile novice chase at Christmas, Darver Star, Felix Desjardins, the gallop, the pace they put into that race, and we pick it up in the back straight. If you look from Felix Desjardins to Darver Star to the winner at the back of the shot, Franco de Port, this race was run at a really strong gallop. You throw in Enoga Bean, you throw in the way Unaccepted likes to jump and gallop, and this race could be end to end. But the question is, does it set up again for a Franco de Port? I don't know. I think this is just a better race than the one at Christmas. I think Enoga Bean brings another level to it. And Franco will be coming from off it, but no, I think I'd be sticking with Enoga Bean. I
think it's going to be interesting because I think it is going to be set up to suit Franco de Port again, and I think he's been slightly underestimated for this trip because he finished off so strongly last time. I think Darver Star's much better than his finishing position last time for the reasons we discussed earlier in the show with Gavin. Enoga Bean's adjusting, jumping right. Any concern?
Well, we'll find out on Saturday, because if you jump right in Leopardstown, you give away an awful lot of ground, mind you. Notebook jumped right last year and it didn't stop him.
Yeah, okay. I suppose it depends on how deep the opposition is comparatively.
Exactly.
We thought that was deep last year, the Irish Arkle. Maybe in retrospect, Notebook clearly the best.
We were wrong.
It happens. Right, let's move on to the Irish Champion Hurdle next, shall we? And that features, of course, Honeysuckle, looking to retain her crown. She's up against the Willie Mullins trio and a pair from Gordon Elliott as well.
There's only 2 form lines here, so it's Honeysuckle. We have her here winning last year. Looks like she's going to go win well going to the last. Gets in underneath it. Petit Mouchoir jumps by her, and she battles back well to win. Great performance. She's a Grade 1 winner against Geldins over 2 miles for the second time. Because you pick her up winning the Hatton's Grace in 2019, where she absolutely routed Bacardis down the straight. She's just in a league of her own. So she came to this race last year off the back of that run. She's coming here this year off the back of this, beating Ronald Pump, Beacon Edge and Bacardis. We haven't seen Ronald Pump since. Beacon Edge got run over in Naas last week. Bacardis got run over in Gorham Park and Leopardstown since. Is that form as strong in 2020 as it was in 2019? We're going to find out on Saturday, but I'm not sure it is. And then the other form line is the Matheson Hurdle at Christmas. You see them here away from the second last. Sharjah, St. Roy, Abacadabra, Saldier, Petit Mouchoir, all the very same horses again. Drier ground this day. Really suited Sharjah, who travelled well. I don't know why St. Roy didn't keep going. Petit Mouchoir ran an admirable race. I'm not an Abacadabra fan, but I think he underperformed at Christmas, and I think Salier has improved. I think a lot here depends on is Honeysuckle the filly she was last year or not. And if she is, I think she'll be too good for the Geldings.
Okay, Abacadabra's returned with mucus in his lungs last time, didn't he? Willie Mullins has been talking about Saldia having improved quite a bit at home, and they've had a clear run with him, but he still thinks he needs to improve a lot to get involved here. He was clearly very disappointed with Samoa. That came out clearly in the press conference earlier this week.
We were, very disappointed with him because he didn't do the one thing we thought he would do, Lydia, and that was keep going. He was a county hurdle winner. We expected him to stay at it, and he didn't. He folded, so we were disappointed with him,
And so what happened to Sharjah in this race last year, and could it happen again?
Made a bad mistake early. Patrick changed tactics on him, and he was annoyed with himself. He went and rode closer to Honeysuckle, whereas Sharjah likes to sit off the pace and warm up. He changed tactics here this time last year. It didn't work, so I would expect him to ride the same race he rode at Christmas.
Let's move on to the Sunday of the Dublin Racing Festival because it keeps rolling. We've got the Tassels Island Spring Juvenile Hurdle, where I feel a lot is going to be sorted out.
Well, we might figure out what the best contender or best pretender to Zana here is maybe, but without Zana here I don't know if we will, Lydia. Look, we have Quilixios of Gordon's, that's his representative. We see him here winning in Down Royal. It was his second start over hurdles, his second win. He beats Farna Gold, jumped well, stayed well. Why haven't we seen him since October is probably the question mark there. Willie runs a couple. Umador, see him here in Ferryhouse down beside Tihupu to the last hurdle. I think he was going to win, but as I know better than most people, you don't win if you fall, and Numador ends up on the ground. He's schooled well since, so hopefully he's gotten over that. And then you have the hurdle races at Christmas. You've Bustleton, Hador and St. Sam behind Zana here. Bustleton went along close to a slowly run race and got the run of the race, quickened well off the bend on the JJ Slevin. Hador came from the back of the field, swooped round the outside. On his first start, he's entitled to have improved, but St. Sam, he didn't get any run. He was boxed in on the inside, doesn't get out till he got to the last hurdle, and he's plugged on. And then, of course, you have French Cecile, who won a maiden hurdle in Leopardstown at Christmas, really impressively, since moved to Willie Mullins' yard. So Willie's thrown plenty of darts, or has the potential to throw plenty of darts at this race. If there's value, I think just looking at it right now, I think St. Sam was overlooked. He was most inconvenienced at Christmas.
Now, what's all this? Because Willie was getting sweet on St. Sam as well earlier in the week. What's been the thinking in Clisson? And I take the point that he had to come.
We were listening to you. You were marking him up for his run in Ferryhouse. He got no run at Christmas, so we're just taking you at your word, Lydia.
Oh dear, that's your first mistake. I really quite like the way that Hador ran. I that was the horse that I took out in terms of Grade 1 contests from that race last time.
Yeah, possibly. He works really well at home, and he'll wear the hood again. He is a big keen.
Okay, let's move on to the Chanel Farmer Novice Hurdle. That's a Grade 1 over 2 miles, and it sees Appreciated pitching up. Yeah,
and look, where's the pace in this race? Appreciated obviously wants a strong 2 miles. He jumped out at Christmas time and went along handy, but Fire Attack took it off him, and Fire Attack made it a really strongly run race. Now, you don't have Fire Attack this time. Now, you've Appreciated quick off the bend. Irascible came from well behind. Kesk on Risk kept at it, where Joseph's horse was absolutely flying at the time. Possibly not. And the same possibly of Gordon's. Ballyadam finishes fourth. And then you've Ngolo as well, who probably has to improve. Now, Master McShee, if he lines up here, we see him in the handicap hurdle at Christmas. Ian Power, big handicap field. He books out in front. He could be the pace angle, and could wide receiver be. Wide receiver has a pretty attractive mark in the UK though, so will even line up in this race on Sunday, we don't know. But he was ridden very close to the pace in the maiden hurdle at Leopardstown on St. Stephen's Day. Jumped much better than he was ridden handily. So I think if wide receiver and Master McShee line up here and they take each other on, it'll only make it easier for Appreciated.
And how about Ballyadam?
Has to bounce back. Did dictate things in the Hatton's Grace and won a sprint. But I just think you should never ride any horse off for one day. But he's had 2 days because he couldn't get beaten a bumper either, and he did.
I take your point about wild receiver. Me and everybody else on the planet, it seems, has him in mind for one of the handicaps at Cheltenham. Let's move on to the Flowgas. I always love this race. So we see the return of Monkfish, and latest exhibition is having another go.
Yeah, round 3, I think, is it? They had the first round off in last year's Albert Bartlett, Time Hill and Fury Road for them. What a race that was. And then you had the novice chase here at Christmas, the Neville's Hotel. Latest exhibition, went at Monkfish at the second last. They both kept quickening all the way down to the last. Neither of them backed out of it, but Monkfish has clashed with him twice, has beaten him twice, and I think it's just a better horse than him. As regards the opposition, you feel Dudare, who gave Envoy Allen, I wouldn't say a fright, but some bit of a race in Punchestown, jumped the second last, got up beside him, and looked like a horse that maybe in time going a little bit further would suit him. This is 2.5 in Leopardstown. That was 2.4, 2.5 in Punchestown. Should suit him a little bit more. You could have Asterion for launch, going left-handed Lydia, off the back of 2 falls. Here in Limerick, you see him tipping up. The first in Punchestown tipping up. But I think if he does run, you'll see him ridden differently. I'd imagine Willie would be keen on dropping him in. You could have Janadil, who has to improve a lot from his run in Limerick at Christmas. You see him coming down the outside here of Call Reevy and Penselfoot led, but he faded out of that. And Andy Dufresne is the other JP McManus horse in it. He likes to race close to the pace, and that could be the only thing that's lacking in this race. Monkfish might have to make his own run.
Yeah, I take that point. Andy Dufresne for me is the one that's the horse that represents the unknown for Monkfish. Later Exhibitions obviously is a worthy rival. Asterion for Longe in the jumping, Janadil even in the jumping. I'm not completely convinced, and he hasn't, he hasn't proved himself in that department. I don't think just yet.
Yeah, I thought he was good in Ace. For whatever reason in Limerick, he just didn't seem to be the same horse.
Then we have just the 5 for the Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup, which surprised me. Delta Work, Kemboy, Melon, Minella Indo, and the Storyteller.
Yeah, and look, all 5 ran in the Savills. So it's not quite the Savills, but it's 5 horses from it. And I pick up the Savills, you see Kemboy jumped out in front, and he went to set a really good gallop. Can you see the same thing happening on Sunday? Yeah, I can. I can see Kemboy jumping out to go. Manila Indo was sat handy down the inside, but unfortunately, the first pence past the stands, he chases his mind and turns over and gets rid of it and takes a crash and fall. We're assuming he's okay after that. We let it roll to the next fence, and Delta Work makes a mistake and unseats Sean Flanagan. Now, I think if we pause it there for a second, 5 runners would be a big help to Delta Work.
Yeah.
Small field. He likes to take his time. He likes a bit of light. He likes a bit of room. And in a 5-runner field, it's much easier to be at the back than it is at the back of 12 or 14. So I think a 5-runner field would really suit him. He faced into the back straight, and you see Mellon jumps up to take on Kemboy, and they go at it, hammer and tongs. Mellon jumps by him at the 6th last or 7th last, and he leads them all the way across to the second last fence, where Kemboy comes back at him. Mellon slows down to jump it. Mellon slows down to jump. Kemboy jumps up, take each other on again off the home turn, and lo and behold, a Plutar comes and runs him down. I don't see Mellon being ridden the same way. So Willie has said that. So you can see Kemboy going forward, Manila Indo sitting second. But who sits third? Because the Storyteller, who we saw in the Savills, was dropped out last. He didn't see him in the Savills, saw him in the behind Flooring Porter. He was dropped out last. If we go back to Down Royal, when he won the Labrooks chase up there, he was dropped out last. We know Delta Work likes to take his time. So is taking your time with Mellon going to be sitting third? Or is it going to be sitting behind the other 2 horses?
And how easy a task is it going to be to settle a horse that's been asked to bowl along previously with just 4 horses up against him?
I think it'll be easier. I think it would be easier to sit behind a couple small runner field. Yeah, you're obviously not going to get covered as such, but in chases you probably wouldn't bury a horse the same way you would in a hurdle race anyway. So I think it'd be okay. It just gets tricky. You sit third, and the 2 guys in 4th and 5th keep jumping up on you and pushing you forward. So that'll be the tricky part.
And the biggest impact in terms of Cheltenham, you're looking at Minella Indo, you're looking at Mellon, aren't you?
I think so, without doubt. Manila Indo, does he become can he confirm himself as a strong challenger to Album Photo? And Mellon will learn Gold Cup or Ryanair, I suppose. And the fact that Mary and Joe Donnelly own Album Photo, it would look Ryanair to me.
Okay, so 2 fabulous days at Leopardstown. Let's move to Sandown, where they're holding an all-chase card because the hurdle track is just too wet. They always have the Virgin Bet Silly Isles Novices Chase on this day, a Grade 1 over 2.5 miles. An interesting field, including the Quarto Star winner, Shan Blue.
Yeah, and his jumping was spectacular when we watched him in Kempton, and we highlighted this in the past. I think Dan Skelton's doing the right thing, coming back in trip with him. Horses that like to jump and attack the way he does, I think it's easier to do that over 2.5 than it is trying to extend it out on the other side of 3 miles. So I think he'll take a fair bit of following. You can see Hitman. Look, he just found All Mankind too quick for him in the Henry VIII. He jumped well, travelled well, just didn't have the gears to get up to All Mankind. And then you have Messer de Zobo. And we watched him winning in Wincanton. We watched him at the last in the rescheduled Dipper, where he beat Protectorate. Look at the jump at the last. I mean, how much energy has he left in the tank? So yeah, this Scilly Isles will be a really, really good race.
And you've got Dame de Compagnie as well, who her only experience so far of chasing was in a match.
It was up in air. She made a mistake at the fourth fence where she knuckled over on landing. But look, we showed it already. You watched her at the fifth fence. It didn't knock a fig out of her. She obviously gets the weight allowance, 10 stone 11 on her back. She's a Coral Cup winner, so she should stay. But this is obviously a much different race than the one she ran in air.
When Hitman finished second in the Henry VIII, you were thinking about the Scilly Isles for him. Are you still sweet on him now?
Yeah, often Scilly Isles can often not maybe be as hot a contest as it is this weekend. I think you have the Felton winner, Messer de Zobo's done nothing wrong, and you have last year's Coral Cup winner and Dame de Compagnie. It's a decent race, Lydia.
It really is. Sandown also has the Cotswold Chase Grade 2-3 miles. This is the race that they've benefited from the abandonment of Cheltenham last Saturday. It becomes a very different race, doesn't it, Ruby, going right-handed?
I think it does, but look, Sandown in November or February even will be quite testing anyway. We really will be a slog. Great race, Native River, Bristol de Mai, Lakeview Lad. It's a really, really good field. A lot of pace here though, Lydia. Native River, Bristol de Mai, Santini won't be far away, Yala Inky. They like to be all get up there and get on it. And I think Native River and Santini, Yala Inky, they would really push Bristol de Mai. They will turn this into a real slog. And I think it could suit the horses sitting behind. And I think all that pace will really help St. Calvados to settle. I think he was too keen in the King George. There was a bigger field. I think Gavin Sheehan will be able to sit last on St. Calvados and get him to switch off and creep away from the back of six. It will be much easier on Sandown than it was ever going to be in the King George. And I think with the competition that's in this race between the other horses, all pushing Bristol de Mai, it could leave St. Calvados coming at a rather tired bunch of horses.
And what do you make of his run in the Tingle Creek in 2018? Was that the trip for you?
I think it was. I think he was a free-going horse, but I believe the only place St. Calvados was ever fast was in his own head. I don't think he was that fast, actually that physically fast a horse. He loves real soft ground. He was second to Maine in front of a Plutar in last year's Ryanair. And I think if Gavin Sheehan walks him out stone last here and he can switch off, he was too keen to King George, I think he could beat all these.
And Santini, right-handed, he only scrambled home on less testing ground here previously.
I was going to say that if you're going to knock St. Calvados' Sandown form, Santini's is pretty average. His performance here. That was his first run of the year in November time. Much different ground, different battle today. But he looked. No, I don't see it. And Aidan Coleman rides him as we discussed, potentially discussed last week. And it'll be interesting for them. But look, if I was to be pushed into having a bet here, it would be St. Calvados.
It's interesting that Nicky Henderson has kept Aidan Coleman on board because Nico de Boinville's there. He's riding Dame de Compagnie in the preceding race. So clearly Nicky wants Aidan to get to know this horse before the Gold Cup. Santini, I mean. Yeah,
and that's just the way it's going to be. Obviously, Nico's going to ride Champ next week in Newbury, and that's the way it's going to be. Santini, is there much to get to know about him? Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Well,
keep squeezing, keep clicking, keep pushing. Pretty self-descriptive.
Earn your fee. It's as we were discussing last week. I think it's a positive for Champ. Really, I mean, it suggests a pecking order. Don't you think?
I think so too.
So that's the rescheduled Cotswold Chase, which could be a very different race to the one that we were imagining 7 days ago. Weatherby's also got the rescheduled Cleve Hurdle. It sees Itchy Feet running there again, trying 3 miles for the first time. And On the Blind Side, who's in great form currently. There will be lots to look back on this time next week, Ruby.
Oh, there will, Lydia. It'll be a much easier show to make. We can talk about what's happened rather than try and predict about what's going to happen.
Yeah, less egg on face perhaps, but it will have a big impact, I think, the racing this weekend on the festival at Cheltenham, Aintree, Punchestown and all the other races around. So make sure you tune in this time next week. In the meantime, thanks for watching.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.